Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I'm going to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Well, we begin first by taking a look at the flow of the atmosphere here on Monday, September 30th. And this is a highly amplified pattern featuring this large ridge that goes into western Canada that then pulls back into this deep trough that's sitting over the northwest that then rides into this ridge. And this ridge right here is one that I want to talk about because for this time of year to see a ridge of that magnitude is quite important because one, it's going to protect the southeast from getting any precipitation, although I don't think many of us want to be protected from this. We'd like to get some rainfall coming in. But that's what these ridges do. And secondly, this is going to focus all of our inclement weather right here between that trough and ridge. Now, just to show you what this ridge is doing, I want you to take a look at this map. This is valid later on tonight, 7 p.m. And I want to zoom in and show you what are called height anomalies. Now, we often look at the thickness of the atmosphere as a way to gauge not only temperature patterns, but also the flow of the atmosphere and where we expect to get precipitation. This is why I show this to you so often. We have the deep trough in blue on the left, and then this big ridge on the right. And I want to specifically focus in on this number, 5,950. Now, the center of that ridge is right there over the lower Mississippi River Valley. But coming over to the Carolinas, we will see heights of the 500 millibar surface, and again, that's about halfway through the density of the atmosphere. Those heights will reach 5,900 meters. Now, you're probably going, why are you telling me this, Eric? I'm telling you this because the ridge that we're about to experience over the next few days might be a record setter. So we've been launching weather balloons across the United States for decades, and we can collect that information and put it kind of in one aggregate view. And I'm going to show you here for Greenville. And what we've done here is we've constructed what the normal is. So normally, the thickness of the atmosphere sits somewhere in this area that I'm shading right in through here. The record lowest are in blue on the bottom, and the record highest heights are in red on top. And right over here, September 30th, we may set a new all-time record most thick layer from the surface to 500 millibars. And when I tell you that's protective, that is a giant roadblock in the atmosphere that's going to take some effort to break down because it is record setting. Now look at the consequences of that. Where that ridge sits, right at center, right there over parts of Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, that area, we're going to be seeing temperatures there getting deep into the 90s and spreading over into parts of Georgia as well, deep into the 90s. We're lucky in the Carolinas today in that we have a northeast wind that's coming in kind of helping to cool things off, keeping us there in the low to mid 80s. But the heat that you see in this area is on the move, and we have to talk about when it's going to be getting over to us later this week. Another consequence of a large ridge like that, well, gives you this map. We're looking at the last 30 days in terms of percent of normal rainfall. Now, outside of the impact of Dorian coming in just like this, soaking parts of the Carolina coast, outside of that, well, we can see how very, very dry things have been, and we are in desperate need of rainfall in parts of the western Carolinas, even despite some of the rainfall we got over the weekend. You can see here some of that weekend rainfall, some of the light showers that did spread through parts of the Carolinas, but the overall deficit is still there. Now, what I want to do is I want you to also see the influence of this deep trough out west and big ridge over the southeast, what that pattern's doing to the rest of our major growing regions across the United States, especially those that we're in competition with. So with that, take a look at central Illinois, northern Indiana, Michigan, parts of Iowa and Missouri, this corridor right in through here. Over the weekend, some locations picked up an additional 6 to 10 inches of rainfall. If you are a corn and soybean farmer in the Carolinas, this is critical for you to understand. The rainfall we've seen in this area and the rainfall we're anticipating in this area is going to continue to cause major flood problems. And I live inside that circle, and I've seen the devastation that some of this flood has caused in north central Illinois. Now, we did get some pretty impressive storms over the weekend. My colleague Andrew Pritchard grabbed this incredible picture here of this supercell thunderstorm that moved through. So we had some really nasty weather as well. But on the other side of that protective ridge, you can actually just see the cold frontal boundary. See this? This was back on Saturday. I want you to also know for those corn and soybean farmers that the north central part of the United States, well, pockets in North and South Dakota and Minnesota actually had their first frost of the season. And the problem is not so much with the frost, but the fact that they're just not accumulating heat that they need to finish out their corn and soybean crop, which has been a worry all along. So these were Saturday morning temperatures over the weekend. By the way, that system that's climbing out of Montana did this to parts of Montana. There were some reports of over 4 feet, yes, 4 feet of snow in parts of north central Montana. This was out of Great Falls. You can see some of the heavy snowfall amounts we accumulated here. And just to show you what that snowfall map looks like, just to understand this, big snows with this deep low that is sitting in this area. Well, why I'm talking about it so much is this low is moving toward the Hudson Bay. And unfortunately, the ridge that is sitting over the southeast is going to stop it from getting to us here in the Carolinas. We need to get rid of that ridge, and we need to see when we're going to get rid of it. So what do we also need to talk about here around the rest of the country? Well, you will see this area fill in with more flood watches. Okay, that is definitely going to happen. You're also going to see the impacts coming out soon in the news of the freeze advisories we have early this morning in parts of the Columbia Basin and the Snake River Valley. Now, those areas I just kind of highlighted there are some of the most productive regions in the western United States, and they grow a lot of crops that we are in competition with in the Carolinas. And so to have this hard freeze while they're deep in that trough is substantial for their agricultural productivity. I do have to show you one last thing here before we get far into this forecast. What you're looking at over here on the right is a radar image, and that radar image was actually showing you the supercell here just to the west of Sacramento. See the little hook echo on the back side of this? Well, that particular supercell not only produced hail, but also the tornado that you see over here. And Brennan, who was out videotaping this, was having a bit of a good time here. You can listen in. Okay, Brennan. So I think one of the reasons why he's excited is it's quite rare to have a tornado in the Sacramento Valley here. It's incredible to see this. You can see it throwing quite a bit of what looks like to be hay as it moving through some sort of a grove of trees here. I'm not sure what's grown there, but this is just how chaotic this particular pattern has got us into. And by the way, one last thing before I give you the forecast. Take a look at this. Hurricane Lorenzo, which is the only hurricane we're watching right now out in the Atlantic, is the easternmost Category 5 strength hurricane on record, and it is moving toward the British Isles, and it could potentially be causing a lot of problems for Europe in the coming week. So that was the chaos of last weekend, and this is where things are going. You did get, over the weekend, some widely scattered showers and storms on the westward-facing slopes of the Appalachian Mountains. But the deeper low-pressure system that's out west there, as it is continuing to evolve and move toward the Great Lakes, really toward the Hudson Bay, it's going to be one that misses us throughout this week. So we have a very dry week that is coming up here for most of the Carolinas. Outside of some storms here in the mountains, it's going to be very dry. In fact, we won't see rain here kind of as you get over to the, from the Piedmont further to the east for quite some time, as all of the rain over the next several days is going to be focused right in through a corridor, right in through here around that big ridge. So that's the influence of that ridge. Take a look at this. This is just animating for you our high resolution NAM model getting out through Wednesday morning. And you can almost see the flow going around that ridge. Let me just take you back. Just watch. See it? Well, first of all, on Monday, about a 30 to 50% chance of storms here in the western mountains. Other than that, not much rain for much of North Carolina. We can see that as we get through the heat of the day on Tuesday, pop-up storms are certainly possible, but at this point, all of the most adverse weather forecast to hit right in through this corridor. Again, protective ridge in place. So when is the rain going to get to us? Well, let's just play out here our longer range models and take a look at when that's going to happen. We can see the storms possibly here in the western mountains throughout the day on Monday, but you'll notice that getting through this week, I'm already out to Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It is a dry week and the temperatures will be climbing. When do we finally have a chance at getting some rainfall? It may not be until we get into next week. Monday, look at this. This is Monday, Tuesday, maybe next Tuesday. And what has to happen for us is we've got to get this big area of higher atmosphere pressure that's coming in behind the pattern that finally breaks down and shoves the trough over to the east. Until then, high and dry is the name of the game. That's why I played it so fast. High and dry is the name of the game. Now, when does that pattern break down? Well, let's take a look here. We see that through middle of this week, we get a reinforcing trough out west and a big, broader ridge here over the eastern half of the United States. By the time we get toward the weekend, this is when things finally start to change up a bit. So by the weekend, this is now early next week into Monday, this trough barrels on through the Great Lakes states and finally brings the front that comes through and relieves us of the heat and maybe brings in some moisture for early next week. I'm talking really into Tuesday timeframe. But then we'll go right back over to some warmer temperatures as we get back into a flow pattern around the 10th, 11th, and 12th, featuring a broader trough out west. And again, not such a huge ridge over the east, but certainly not a deeper trough. So in terms of temperatures, take a look at this. This is going to play fast, but I'll bring it back and show you the details. High temperatures Monday, temperatures Tuesday. Look at Wednesday, the heat gets back into the 90s. For Thursday as well. But that front, you can find it there too. Finally moves in by the time we get into Saturday. See that? Now that's Saturday's high temperatures. Yes, back into the 70s here. And that's what kicks us off for a cooler weekend, going back into much closer to climatological normal temperatures with highs in the middle to upper 70s. Again, our next chance at rain coming in with that front at the end of the weekend and early next week. Overall, look at this. This is just to give you more perspective on the North Central Plains. We need in this area at least another 200 to 300 growing degree day units. We're anticipating over the next 9 days of, in some locations, picking up under 30. Meanwhile, under the ridge, we're going to pick up between 200 and 300 here in the southeast. That's the difference in that flow pattern in terms of the way we accumulate heat. So again, this is a map over the next 9 days showing growing degree day unit accumulation. So putting it all together, over the next 5 days, highly amplified pattern. We know the drill here. This is where the 90s return. The pattern breaks down toward the end of the weekend, and that's when we finally get some seasonable weather coming in here in terms of temperatures across the Carolinas. But as we get out here into the middle of the month, as the pattern does seem to want to relax a little bit, we're going to be facing near average temperatures as we get out to the 12th through the 15th of the month. And that's what we're looking at here in bigger picture temperature patterns. Do we need to be watching the tropics? Well, about the only feature that I'm keeping a close eye on came out of the Caribbean early this weekend. We just need to watch it sitting right in through here. This is just the probability of getting a tropical depression to form. By most indications, this heads up in this direction. Thankfully, Karen did nothing last week but sat there and fizzled away. We don't see too much in the way of tropical activity other than the Lorenzo, which is also not going to be a problem here as we move into the next week or so. So keep an eye there in the Gulf of Mexico, because moisture from a system like this could get pulled back over into the Carolinas with time. I'm going to wrap it up by just giving you a quick discussion about what's going on in South America. The MJO has been stuck in phase 1, and that's largely because of a couple of other features. 1, the Indian Ocean dipole. 2, the trade wind behavior in the Central Pacific. And 3, the behavior of the positive phase of the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. Now, do you need to really fully understand what all that means? No, just remember this. When the MJO is in phase 1, it tends to be a more favorable phase for precipitation in Brazil, specifically in through this corridor, which we see right in through here. Now, that is one feature of this. The problem is that Brazil has been so dry, take a look at this, that so far the year-on-year vegetation health index is negative, and even throughout the month of the end of August and much of September here, they've been below average in precipitation. This is all delaying the planting of soybeans, which is first crop. Now that's important for the Carolinas, for our soybean growers, but also for our cotton and corn growers as well. Because the longer they delay the planting of the soybeans, the longer they'll delay the planting of the safrinha crop, which is cotton and corn. And as a result, this could certainly put pressure on those second crops as we get here to them wanting to plant by January for those second crops, but maybe delayed this year. So what are they waiting on? About 2 inches of rainfall. They need enough rainfall to bring up the soil moisture such that they can get the soybean to germinate properly and begin to mature. And they're just not getting it in the near term, so we're going to continue to delay some planting there. Okay, long forecast video here, but I wanted to bring you up to speed on all the things we're watching, not only across the U.S., but in South America. But with that, we'll wrap it up right here. We, Nutrient Ag Solutions and the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina, thank you for your attention. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you.